I'm Bob. I'm an alcoholic. Sober through the grace of God and AA since the 10th of December, 1967. For that, I'm very grateful.
Go, Bob.
Well, hey guys, if you can take a seat. Born and raised St. Paul, Minnesota, one of 7 kids, fabulous mom and dad. Born in a Catholic ghetto. It really was. Our whole lives were based around parochial grade school and high school, the people you played in sports, and and I lived in a city where they wanted to know what parish you were in. They wanted to know what your maiden name was because they probably, went to high school with someone in the. I'm one of 7 kids. My uncle had 7 kids. My other uncle had 2. Those 16 had 46. And, and with husbands and wives, we were at a family picnic and I think we had 130. It's an extraordinary family. There wasn't a conflict in the entire 120 people. I mean, it's just, I'm just the luckiest guy in the world. Love my brothers and sisters. And so I grew up in an idyllic time. You could drive your bicycle down the street, leave it at a neighbor's house, and come back 2 days later, and it was still there. Those were those Second World War men. They worked hard, played hard, drank hard. I mean, they just, they made life look attractive and easy. And they were my models. Just like Jack talked about, I had, I knew what all the values were. I knew what it was to be a man. And so I started out. My mother always said, "You're not very bright, Bob. Dress well." So I always tried to present myself, well. I was a money spender, and I always tried to dress well. I worked at a clothing store when I wasn't in school, and spent a lot of money buying clothes that I didn't need. Spent a lot of money to buy things I didn't need to impress people I didn't like. And that's a deal. So, I had an idyllic Catholic parochial education. I was a thief early in life. I stole from my mom. I stole from anybody I was related to. I was a candy addict. I was a sugar addict, and I just, needed money. And then I went to a military high school on a Catholic military high school on a college campus, and I would steal things like hat brasses. I would break into lockers and steal things I absolutely didn't need. I don't know what the hell that was. I always look back on that and I think, goodness gracious. What was that? I never knew Catholics drank more than other people, but if we're having a contest, I'm bringing my folks. It is, we drank in high school like most people drink in college. We had fraternities, and our parents, had caseloads of booze down the basement, and we just stole it from them, and we found out places that if you wore a necktie and a sport coat, they served you, so we started drinking when we were 14, 15 years old. We'd find out the country clubs that would serve you and all that sort of thing. And my drinking problem developed heavily in high school. And I always remember, so I had a reputation for being, a drunk in high school. I had a chance to go away to school. I got in some scrapes with the police, some, had a chance to go away to college. I thought that'd get my dad off my back. I thought it'd, get me away from some of the authority that I was running. I was smart, but ineffective. It's a really crappy combination. So I got into, I applied to 4 or 5 universities, got into all of them, I think, and then I went to the University of Notre Dame. And my dad was in the real estate business, so I thought somehow engineering would help. So I got into civil engineering. So you're carrying 25 credits a semester. I started out as a B+ student and end up as a 2.000 guy. My senior year, I didn't go to school. I didn't go to class. I didn't know where they were. You know, you run your string out. It gets kind of tough to bluff your way through a thermodynamics exam. And, you know, I cribbed and crammed my way through 3 years, 3+. And not too long ago, Mike Kozlowski arranged for me and my wife to have a tour. I was invited down for second or third time down in South Bend to give an AA talk in Mishawaka. And you got to me a tour of Notre Dame. They have built 70 buildings since I went there. It is just unbelievable the amount of money these universities have accumulated and what they've done with it. I mean, it's an extraordinary university. I'm, you know, really impressed. When I went down there, I was 1 of 12 for my high school. I had the highest test marks of anybody, and I didn't have to go through orientation, and I was the only one who didn't finish. You have now heard my life story. I was the class drunk. I mean, I literally was the class drunk, and they used my room. I mean, I could tell you war stories that I went through, but anyway, I was a lonely, sad son of a bitch during those years. And I had people around me that I knew and cared about me, and I was a loner because I would sleep through my classes in the morning, get up, put a suit on, go downtown, and I was a bar drinker, and I drink in the bars till, you know, I was a gambler, so I supported myself by gambling, and I got $90 a month from ROTC, and that was my drinking money. And when I ran my string out, I went and told my rector that I was leaving. He said, God, you're a senior, for God's sake. You can't leave. Just get up tomorrow and go to class. Well, I didn't know where my classes were. That was not an option. I had run my string out. I was due to be commissioned as an officer that summer, and I had to get a medical release. The medical release I got was for alcoholism. I was diagnosed an alcoholic when I was 18 or 19 years old. I was I had some near-death, I had the sort of stuff that we all do, car accidents and arrests. And so I was under psychoanalysis for 2 or 3 years. And the psychiatrist diagnosed me as an alcoholic, which I thought was just nonsense. And then I go down, so now I'm going to school, and he refers me to a psychiatrist in Notre Dame. It's a woman psychologist, and somewhere in their first interview, she asked me if I was homosexual. And I thought, oh, God, I got enough trouble dealing with alcoholism. I don't, right now, I don't need another, item to put on my, but I went back and asked my psychiatrist. She said, yeah, she was some Freudian, where they relate that. He said, so I left Notre Dame, middle of my senior year, came back, finished school at the local university in business. All I had to do at Notre Dame was change the business. I could have coasted through, but no, I don't want my parents to know that I'm in trouble. And when I finished school, my dad asked me to leave home. He said, we don't know what to do with you. I'm the guy who promises, if you're going to drive the car, don't drink. It's all I ask you. If you're going to drive, don't drink. Well, somewhere in the evening, I just thought I'd have 2. And I had to drink. I had to drive. I couldn't walk. And so it is. Of my 5 closest high school friends, 4 of us are members of Alcoholics Anonymous, and 1 is Al-Anon. So of the 6 of us, 5 of us are in the program. 2 of our wives are sober. We're all sober more than 45 years, and we've all been married over 58 years. Now, that's an odd combination. We live in a no-divorce zone. I mean, it is really something. So, I get accepted into officer candidate school. I'm getting ready to go to Vietnam. The war's on. I've lost my exemption for being a student. And I'm getting ready to go, and they lose my file, and they ask me to take the physical again for the 4th time, and they fail me for a hearing problem. So now I don't have to go in the Army. So Linda and I get engaged, we married. I thought, wow, I get a job as a trainee at a manufacturing concern. I said, I bought a car. said, I'm going to be a grown-up. Only I couldn't quit drinking. I was, just before I went back to my senior year, I was beaten up, robbed, rolled, pistol whipped, shot at, and thrown out of the second story of a hotel. And I ended up in a state of shock. I ended up in a psych ward. And they were not going to let me go back to school. I talked my way out of that. They let me go back to school. And I lasted, 3 months, 4 months. But I stayed sober for 2 months. And I thought I proved two things to myself. I'm still an asshole. I'm still not going to school. There's something wrong with me that doesn't have to do with swallowing bourbon. And the other one was if I really had to, I could quit. Well, now I'm engaged and you're married. In my family, if you don't take care of your wife, you better move. I mean, they would have taken my wife over me in a New York minute. And I can't quit. Now I'm the company drunk. I'm sleeping off my hangovers. And there's a photographer that let me sleep my hangovers off in the dark room of this large corporation, that I quit that job about the time I was going to be fired. When I went back to make amends to the guy who hired me, he said, God, you interviewed so well. I said, yeah, we do. We have performance issues, but we interview well. I quit that job. I got a job as a salesman. I was a salesman who didn't make sales calls. And I just lied about my act, made up reports about what I was doing. I mean, it's just, I look back on this and I think, who were you? When that tour was arranged for me to go through Notre Dame, I'm driving around in this golf cart looking at these beautiful students, thinking, who were you? I mean, not going to class. I mean, who were you? And I couldn't figure it out. I mean, I really still don't have the insight as to who I was during that period of time and why I was so ineffective at being able to start out well and, do it. So I'm got the sales job, and so my last year of my drinking, I worked at a liquor store when my dad kicked me out of the house, and then I worked as a waiter, and I'm drinking a pint to a fifth a day. No one knows where I am, which is just fine with me. I don't want anybody to know where I am. And I got my face kicked in, and I had to get fired. And, that's when I came in and applied to Officer Candidate School and all that stuff. And so now I got this sales job, and I'm, and I wake up Thursday, sometime in July 1966. Yeah, 1967. Hugging the toilet, dry heaves, doing my morning exercises. That was my moment, To tell you how disgusted I was with myself, I couldn't stand it. And I actually called the National Council on Alcoholism. They referred me to Intergroup, and I called the old timer at Intergroup. And he sent 2 guys out to meet me at the St. Clair broiler about 1.5 miles from where I live today. And as soon as I made the appointment, I thought, oh, this is an overreaction. You're 23 years old. This is not, get serious. But I wanted to go see what they look like. And so I go meet them. No, I had been in front of every kind of help a young person could be in front of. I've gone to spiritual retreats. I talked to priests, bishops, nuns, psychiatrists, psychologists, proctologists. I've talked to every kind of person that I could in that process, and was never able to unwind what was going on in my life. And these 2 guys told me their story. They said, we're from AA, we had a drinking problem, found an answer for it, want to share it with you, hope it helps you. If it doesn't help you, don't worry about it. It helps us talking to guys like you, and they told me their stories. And they altered my life. They changed my life by telling me their story. I went to my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous that night. I met my sponsor that night. I drank twice after that, once after 30 days on a business trip to the West Coast. I was told to call AA. I didn't. I stayed sober for a week, drank for a week. I came back. I was sober 3 months, and I went on our honeymoon to Mexico. And I think, and you know where the divers dive off those cliffs in Mexico. I dove off those cliffs on my last. I'm in the audience watching the world's high diving contest. Best divers in the world. And thought, that's not so tough. So I go over to the ex-president of Mexico, Alamat. His nephew had been my roommate one of my years at Notre Dame. And his bodyguard, no one was impressed. I was just loaded. So I dive off the public landing and I climb up the cliff. I split my swimsuit, I cut my leg. I'm going up, the divers dive at about 125 feet and I'm up about 90, I think. I'm stuck. I can't get up, I can't get down. My wife is going absolutely batshit. All she can think of is Minnesotan brought home in a body bag, And I'm trying to decide whether to jump or dive. And I finally dove, and God watches after fools. If I would have jumped, I would have died. You have to get out 32 feet to hit the channel. And if I knew that, I just must have known it intuitively. And then I had my last drink on the airplane on the way home, turned myself into my sponsor and started my journey. I loved AA from the moment I walked in the door. It felt like home. I was as confused of what a horse's ass I was as everybody in my life was confused. I really looked like a guy that you'd pick me for your team. You would not have picked me. Had you followed me around in a helicopter for the preceding year and a half, you would have figured out I don't finish anything. Doesn't work. I don't finish anything. I'm a great starter. I look good, but I'm a suit. No one's home. I don't know. I'm glib. I'm fairly socially skilled. I can talk good, but I can't perform. What in the hell is wrong with me? I'm a salesman who doesn't make sales calls. What in the hell is wrong with me? So now I'm married. I'm in Alcoholics Anonymous. I've got the most active member of Alcoholics Anonymous as my sponsor, who's a fabulous guy. And so I'm going to a meeting mostly every day. And, when I'm sober a year or two, I'm giving 10-minute talks at other people's groups. We share, we go put on a meeting, and I got to be one of the 5 or 10-minute talks. And I would just school, and my sponsor was he went to AA events. So I started going to conferences, and I started listening to I've been exposed as the best communicators in Alcoholics Anonymous over the last 58 years. What a gift. I mean, I have literally, those men and women who were and most of the talks today, I don't think many of the people in the audience would find attractive. They were drinkalogs. They started with their first drink, ended with their last, and the last 10 minutes was wife, kids, and job. But it was a story of Christmas. Tell it again. There were 2 or 3 guys that were just comedians. That's all they did was tell jokes during the whole thing. No one would have that, be the case today. But in those days, those men were getting sober when they were 40 years old or 45 years old and living until they were 60 or 65 years old. But today people are coming in, anywhere from their teens into their 20s, and they're sober 10 or 15 years, and their pants are on fire, and they want to know, what are you doing now? Not that thing about, I came to AA, I got sober, and everything's okay. What are you doing now? Because that's not my experience. And that is what the communication has. We are an oral society. The communication has evolved in our society, where we're talking much more. Chamberlain was the guy who really moved turned the ship. Holly Martin, C. Scorigo, Mac Cheater, guys that many people don't know today. And they started talking about the steps in their story. They started running the steps during their AA talk, and they started, giving us, more things to hang on to and what we did. And that story has evolved. And today, the talk is still a third. Tell me what your drinking was like. Tell me what happened, and tell me what you're like today. And today people want some specifics because they're sitting out, they're sober. They know how to stay sober. They're participating in Alcoholics Anonymous, and they're still having significant issues. I found myself, I spend more money than I make. my salary was only about $600 a month. If you spend more money than you make over a long period of time, you end up in debt. I just want to report that to you in case you don't know where this is going. And in my day, you couldn't, getting into debt was tough. We had Checking Plus, which I ran right to the level, almost immediately. But you couldn't get credit cards much, and you couldn't get credit cards with big lines. I mean, it's just extraordinary today how easy it is to get buried in the thing. I'm an unhelpful husband. I'm going to meetings, all I want to do is go to meetings. And we started to have kids, and I told you that I had trouble getting to work, I had trouble staying at work, and I had trouble working at work. Other than that, I was a good worker. And I had a gambling problem. But I'm making almost as much money gambling as I did, which has been the story of my life since I've been a teenager. I was always a card player and a pool player, and that's kind of how I, supported my drinking. And little by slowly, as I say, I had a fence built around those issues, and my idea was, you get me sober and I'll learn how to be a husband. You get me sober and I'll learn how to work. Everybody knows how to work. You get me sober, I'll be, well, I'm sober 2-3 years and I'm not okay. I'm still dealing with the same issues that I told you that many of those issues were not even on my inventory. You can do an inventory according to the book, and you can avoid putting down a lot of things. Gambling's not talked about in the book. Howard Poland's talked about, pointed out where to answer these questions about, putting your whole life in your inventory rather than, just your resentments, fear, and, sex, and start dealing with that. And at 7 to 8 years, I'm thinking about putting a gun in my mouth. And I'm tired of being a loser. I just, I seem to be well equipped, and I'm ineffective. And I found myself, I'm just scraping by. I worked for my dad as long as we both could stand it. I worked for him for about 2 years. It was horrible. And I made a couple of significant contributions. Other than that, I didn't contribute much to the process. And we started a business, and I'm supposed to be selling investments, and I'm a guy who's not making the sales call. I'm doing some, but I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And somewhere around 8 years, I ran my string out. And it all came down on me. And I came to the realization, so I didn't know what to do. I literally did not know what to do. The problem seemed so enormous that I just couldn't resolve them by doing anything. And because I was reasonably well trained, I went back to the steps. And I found out powerless and unmanageable. I mean, anybody with a room temperature IQ could have figured out that I was powerless and unmanageable. Came to believe that power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. That happened to me in a deeper way than I ever had. And in that process of doing the steps and doing an inventory, and in our group, they had clergy lined up to hear your fifth step. And the first 2 fifth steps I did with priests. And then now all of a sudden I'm hearing about the guys in California. I did my 3rd step on my knees with my sponsor, and we didn't do that much in those days. But I started to hear the California people talk about that at some of the conferences I went to. And then when I did my 4th step, I went to my sponsor and said, "Can I do my 5th step?" Sure, with him. And I said, "I feel like I'm dying of thirst lying next to a lake. If you came to my house with my problems and told me them, I think I could even tell you some pretty good advice about what to do. I just can't or won't do it. I am so bloody sick and tired of can't or won't do it that I could just spit And I think I'm ready to do whatever the hell I have to do to get a real life. And I did my fifth step with him. And when I was done, he said, "You got an awful lot of issues around money, work, success, and failure." My dad was a pretty successful guy, and I thought I'll never be as good as my own. I was comparing myself to these guys who were pillars in the community. He said, "I want you to find a psychologist that works with business people." I'm a mailman. "And I want you to go have that conversation with that psychologist. I want you to bring that conversation back to me, and we will have that conversation as it affects your recovery program." And that's what I did. I called up this related psychologist, worked with a lot of some people. And he said, "Will you get your mom and dad involved?" I said, "No, Christ, I'm 30 years old. Or 31 or 2 or whatever the hell." I said, "If you can't help me without getting my parents involved, refer me to someone who can." He said, "Oh, hell, I can, will you get your wife involved?" Well, when your wife's in the room, there's just a lot of information that really isn't all that necessary to core recovery, and it's embarrassing. "Yeah, I'll get my wife involved." "Well, you get your kids involved." I said, "Christ, sir. Yeah, I'll do whatever they want." So I'm having a meeting with a psychologist, fabulous guy, good guy. And I'm explaining to him that my company's going bust. And I'm busting my ass 2-3 hours a day. And, I know none of you have this issue, so it isn't, it's, and, and he looked at me and he said, "Why are you so afraid of failing?" And I wanted to hit him. He just went right into my solar plexus. And I remember saying to him, I said, "Look, you don't understand. I've lived in this city all my life. I'm in the investment business. I'm about to lose everything I have." I said, "You're a goddamn psychologist." I said, "You lose everything you have. You just wait 6 months, walk down the hall, pound your sign on another door, and you're making $100,000 again. I'm going to lose everything I have. Nod your head up and down if you understand that." And what I discovered in that man's room, 8 years sober, sponsoring people, giving AA talks, getting the merit badges, was fear. Now, you think a guy who'd done 3 inventories would have done a fear inventory. I thought fear was snake, dogs, and tall buildings. I was afraid of being a husband. I was afraid of being a dad. I'm afraid of work. I was always the guy who didn't have to study, and I could coast through some of the courses we took. I was afraid that if I ever really put it all on the line, people wouldn't think I was as smart as I was by being the jag-off in the class and still doing okay. I was swimming in fear and was unable to identify it. So I'm home in my living room, shitty day, went to work late, left early, got in a backgammon game and won $500. I missed dinner, I missed the AA meeting, I came home. I got in a fight with my wife and I slapped one of the kids. One of those days you'd like to have videotaped and sent to the General Service Office to show what 8 years can do for you. And I said, "Gee, it happened again." I said, "Jesus, it happened again. Weren't you there?" "Yeah, but it's so habitual. I don't even have to think. It's like it's automatic." And all of a sudden I thought, that's a bunch of crap. Your life is the way it was because you designed it that way. You sound like a guy who wants to quit gambling. You want to gamble whenever the hell you want to gamble for as much money as you want to gamble and not have problems with that. You want money without work. You want your children's and wife's affection and love without spending adequate time with them. Not a very good design. When I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, I had a wall built up, and thinking that went on my wall said, "You like me, which only I like what I let you see. If you could see everything about me, you wouldn't like me. I don't like me." And I stood naked in front of my alcoholism, and I did the very best effort, ineffective, but the very best effort I knew of doing the program. And now I'm 8 years sober, and I'm standing naked in front of my life. And I had a second surrender. I quit gambling that night. I got down on my knees, and I was given the opportunity to take the 6th and the 7th step of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. 6 steps, we were entirely ready to have God, not Bob, remove our defects of character. 7 steps said we humbly ask him to remove our shortcomings. And all of a sudden, it was unconditional. There was no barriers, there was no fences, there was no bullshit, there was nothing between me, and I had a surrender experience. I started to become the man that my wife wanted to be married to. I spent thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours trying to learn how to be a better parent. I think being a parent takes 125% of whatever you got. It's like having a bowling alley installed in your head. It is just, and the instruction manual is kind of skinny. They say that, when you get married, your life has changed. But when you are married with children, life as you know it is over. I mean, it is, children make men out of boys. I mean, it is a really big, wonderful, exciting job. But it is so beyond us that we have to grow to be able to take it on in any sort of a respectful way. And I was physical with my kids, and I was deeply ashamed of that. My old man was very physical with me. And in those days, that was not unusual. I mean, your neighbor's dad could, knock you around a little bit if you were out of line. I mean, I'm serious. I mean, if you were screwing off in someone's house, it was not beyond the thing. And I started dating my wife every Friday night for the next 35 years. It was a real live, dangerous date. It was a romance night. We got dressed up. We went to a restaurant. We didn't go to a movie. No one else went out on that date. And when I was out saving the world, giving AA talks, I did it on Thursday or Sunday. And it was the very best thing. We were out talking about bills and kids, which was not how we fell in love. And all of a sudden, we had a shack up in Chicago and take romantic trips and start to do things that develop, the relationship. And it was really good. I made appointments with my sponsor about going to work, staying at work, and making an appointment, and working at work. I remember I'm out in the parking lot. I have to call on the vice president of General Mills to make an investment of, $10,000, $15,000. And I know it's not going to work. And I do not want to go make the call. And I'm reading the 3rd step prayer to get my ass out of the car to go make the call that I know. So I go up and I make the call. And the guy buys $25,000 worth. And our company, we got 10% of that. So I made $2,500 for myself and the company. And I'm on the elevator on the way down, and I had this thought. I said, if a guy did that regularly, so my life changed like it was on a Lazy Susan. It was as if prior to that, I really didn't do what I didn't want to do. And I became less important. That surrender experience lowered my ego enough that it no longer mattered. And the other thing I did is I made work an AA activity. I always tried to do AA. I just didn't do work. And all of a sudden, my life took off like it was on a rocket ship. I mean, all of a sudden so it was a time also where our business, the real estate investment business, it was a good time for that. And I made enough money over the next number of years to burn a wet elephant. I mean, I bought an 11-bedroom house. I had 2 Mercedes, I had a big one and a little one and all that sort of stuff. I'm coming to the meeting in a couple of $1,000 suit, thinking God had blessed me for what a good AA member. How would you like me in your group? I mean, God, so while there's problems with failure, there's also problems with success. And And then in 1984, they changed the Tax Act, and between 1984 and 1990, I lost everything. I lost $10 million. I lost the big house. Had to move down, you know. We went to a cocktail party in the house that we're in right now. But the big house, the one that I love, we go to the cocktail party, which is a 3-bedroom house down the block. And on the alley on the way home, my wife says, when we're done with the big house, I want that house. And I said to God, the next time you want to do something that my wife wants to do, try not to, you know, make me look like an asshole. And so I bought an 8-year-old Buick. I had to find out, you know, Peter, little craphead. Peter comes home and he gets arrested for drunken driving, totals out an automobile, ends up in detox, ends up in jail. We get him into treatment, and then he goes to Hazel and Sober House, Pioneer House. No, not Pioneer. I'll think of it in a minute. And they had a meeting there on Friday nights, and we would go to that meeting, a room full of people, almost like this. And when the meeting started, I'm going broke. I start crying when the meeting starts. I cry almost all the way through the meeting. See that guy over there? He's got 20 years. How'd you like? How'd you like to have what he has? I think he's got the clap. I don't know what the hell. I don't know what the hell's wrong with him. I had to find out who I was with money and who I was without money. And I didn't enjoy the ride. And when I was going broke, you know, so I'm down in Jerry Jones's house when Jack talked about loving Jerry Jones. And Jerry Jones was the lead attorney of the Thompson Knight law firm in Dallas, you know, and he led the syndicate. So they put him in charge of the lawsuit against the Hunts. They had 22 banks involved, and they made Jerry the lead attorney of this thing, and he just beat the shit out of the Hunts in that silver case. So I'm in this hot tub, and I'm telling Jerry my sad story about how I have lost everything. It never occurred to me I could lose, you know, that once God gave me the right to be successful, that I could lose it all. And he said, you know, I don't feel sorry for you. Stick it up your ass. I mean, you don't feel. He said, if this was happening to me, what you're going through, what would you think? I said, you'd be fine. God, you're the head of the trial department of the goddamn law firm. He said, 3 years from now, we're going to be sitting in this hot tub, and you're going to be fine. That's exactly how I feel about it. It wasn't how I felt at all. I remember I'm at a cocktail party, an AA cocktail party with all these Texans. And I'm telling the guy the story, the sad story. He says, oh yeah, that first time's a bitch. You know, he was an oil guy, you know, and he was used to the ups and downs. And so most of us talk about the surrender and powerlessness to our disease and our inability to quit drinking. And when I had the second surrender, which I was ashamed of, and I think I just felt like it was a failure. And I find that it's one of the most common, when I started talking about this, the problems in sobriety, and started talking about the second surrender, I had guys come up with that didn't make it through that period. You know, they get drunk at 6, 7 years or 8 years, you know, but somewhere between 5 and 15 years, you get your ass handed to you. Because we just weren't deep enough in the program for what, you know, so I came in at 23, so your life started to expand. I mean, I wasn't a parent. I didn't have a career. My life was small. And all of a sudden, I'm in front of what normal 25-year-olds, 26-year-olds, 28-year-olds, 30-year-olds, and I'm not prepared for this. So I don't, you know, I run away. And all of a sudden, somehow you gave me the power and strength to be in front of whatever the hell it was and to use the program. And I realized beyond a question of a doubt, not only could I not get sober alone, I could not do the steps alone. I do not have the power. It happens through me, not by me. But what happens when you're faced with that second surrender, when you've got that 14-year-old girl locked up in the garage, and she comes out just once every couple of months, when you're spending money you don't have to buy things you don't need to impress people you don't like, when you're in danger of losing your job, and you want more than anything else to change those things that are going on, you know what your ego says? Do whatever the hell you want to do. You want to go to AA? Go to AA. You want to take the steps. But get this straight. We are not changing. That's not a joke. There is this conflict that is going on between your subconscious and your ego. We are not changing. We are so invested in who we think we are and how people see us and what we want and trying to have control, because control looks like the people that control their lives better than anybody else are the most successful. And all of a sudden, I'm 8 years sober and I'm bankrupt, and I was given enough humility that I started to really question my thinking, my ideas. And there was a humility in that. And I mean, when Bill Wilson in the 7th Step talks about his treatise on humility, it is so essential and so much a part of what's going on. My life has never been the same since. It has, my resistance to change altered almost entirely. Now, I still leaked. I still had skid marks in certain areas of my life. But all of a sudden, I'm doing stuff. I'm the guy who's doing the analysis for the financial stuff that we're doing within the company. All of a sudden, I'm the guy that's making, the equal amount of sales calls with my partner, who's a Cracker Jack salesperson. And all of a sudden, I'm starting to be effective. And it wasn't because all of a sudden I was brilliant. It was that I actually started to use the program. And it was magical. It was magical at home. It was magical with my kids. It was magical at work. It just literally worked. It was like the secret sauce that allowed me to be in front of life as it presented itself without running away. And what has happened to my life has just been extraordinary. I have a great relationship with we have 3 sons. At one time, all 3 of them were in the program. So you could imagine that we were not problem-free during that process with these kids. One of them called me the other day, and he's 5 days off of marijuana. He's going to a meeting tomorrow morning with my buddy in Cabo. He had 17 years of sobriety and then went back to smoking a little dope. Our middle boy has 35 years. Great guy, very active in Alcoholics Anonymous. Our oldest boy has 38 years of sobriety, and he's not active in AA, but what a fine man he is. What a great dad he is. It's just extraordinary to watch these kids. Really extraordinary. My oldest boy runs our company. We used to have a whole floor of a major building downtown St. Paul, and then for whatever, we were having trouble during the 2008 thing or whatever, and he made a decision that we bought this old mansion. Mansion's a little too strong, but it was an old 4-story brick 1880s house on Selby Avenue, and they gutted it and made it and he did not make an office for me. And I thought that was an oversight. Now, I was having so much conflict with my historical business partner of 53 years that I walked out of the company 10 years ago. I was no longer willing to be who I was in that relationship. And I wasn't able to change him, and I wasn't able to change the relationship. and I left the company. Now, they were nice enough to salary me, and I still own a third of the company. But he has made, it's embarrassing that he has made the company more successful than when I was there. Interesting thing. I'm in love with my wife. And that doesn't have to do with me. It has to do with you. I am able to be, in a way. Sunday morning, I'm going to do a meditation that I do daily. I've been formally trained in meditation, and I've always been irregular with I do it for a year, not do it for a year, all that on and off. And I found something that I do now that I don't think I've missed 5 days in the last 6 or 7 years. And it has softened me. It has given me more comfort and forgiveness about who I am in the world than anything has in the last 6 or 7 years. It has been one of the stronger, that's one of the things that we talk about meditation, and we tend to look at the discursive meditation that Bill does, with the St. Francis prayer and those sorts of things, and the readings that we do in the morning. But most of us, our minds are so busy that we don't think we meditate well. And I'm going to try to put that forth in front of us to take another look at what I do, which is easy, and it's almost like it's being done for you. It is, along with being tired of Bob, which is an advantage. I mean, I really mean that. I am tired of me. I'm tired of my personality. I'm tired of how I think. It isn't like I don't enjoy interacting. It isn't as if I don't love. I do all of that. But my personality is not the driver of that. I am able to be rather than do. And it is an engagement with life that is easier than anything I've ever had before. I don't have any conflict in my life. And it is, I treasure what you men have given me. Thank you. Yes.